So when somebody hacks your computer, right, they're putting a service onto your computer. The one I'm working on right now is actually a Mac. Right?
That's interesting because a lot of people think they won't get hacked if they have a Mac.
I'm also seeing it where some people just are harassing other people by hacking.
Yeah. You are doing these investigations. Like you said, you're getting so many inquiries, and you, at the moment, at the time of this recording, have got at least two that you've told me about, active investigations where people have been hacked.
If a service is free, you are the product.
Hey everyone, David Bombal back with the amazing OTW. OTW, great to have you back on the show.
David, it's always an honor to be on best YouTube channel for cybersecurity and IT.
Really appreciate you saying that. Just for everyone who doesn't know OTW, you should by now. I'll mention his books again. Linux Basics for Hackers. Second edition is now available. Go and get it on Amazon or from OTW's website. Fantastic book if you want to learn about Linux. OTW also has this book, one of my favorites, Network Basics for Hackers, as well as Getting Started Becoming a Master Hacker. And OTW, when are we going to get this Python for Hackers book, man?
It looks like it's going to be end of October.
Great, that's not long.
I'm working diligently right now on trying to get this done by the end of October. We said originally we estimated September. It's going to take a little longer. We want to make sure this is a high quality book and it fits with all the other books that we've put out. And so we're looking at the end of October. So those of you who pre-ordered, be patient. It's going to be here. And the longer I get to work on it, the better it's going to be.
I love that. Looking forward to getting a copy of that. I want to thank Brilliant for sponsoring this video. Math is a really important skill to learn in today's world. Doesn't matter if you want to be a programmer or you're working with machine learning and artificial intelligence. Math gets so much easier when you can see it visually and see how your changes affect the results of your calculations. Brilliant helps you become a better thinker and problem solver with thousands of visual interactive lessons in math, science, programming, data analysis, and AI. Why not try the Solving Equations, Visual Algebra, and Calculus course? In those courses, you'll make a small change to a function and see how that affects a graph, which helps you learn the concept being explained. Instead of memorizing formulas, you're practicing the kind of problem solving that shows up in code analysis and everyday decisions. This is a great and steady way to build your confidence. To learn for free on Brilliant, go to brilliant.org/David Bombal or scan the QR code on screen or click on the link in the video description. Brilliant also gives you 20% off an annual premium subscription if you use my link, which gives you unlimited daily access to everything on Brilliant. Now, for everyone who's watching, OTW is going to share a very cool tool that you can use to check if you've been hacked. If you're finding this too complicated, have a look at our previous video where we covered some more simpler tools and sort of initial stuff to look at. I've put the link below. But OTW, I've got to push you because people always complain that we take too long. Let's get straight into it. We previously created a video where we were talking about how do you know that you've been hacked? And we had some comments. One of the comments was, a common theme was like, this is too basic. I need to know some more advanced stuff that, not anyone would know necessarily. So I'm hoping this time around, you can come back with some tools that can show us perhaps in more detail if we've been hacked. But I don't want to steal your thunder. What are you going to show us?
Well, let's first of all address that, the question about being too basic.
Yep.
Remember that when I was here last and we talked about, have you been hacked? We were trying to direct it to the average Windows user who was out there, who thinks they're hacked. Not necessarily to the pros who are out there who know all the stuff that we already showed. So
exactly,
this is more designed for the person who doesn't have the high level of cybersecurity skills, IT skills. And so we showed a few methods at that point that you could use to be able to get some clue as to whether or not you've been hacked. What I'd like to do today is do something a little bit more sophisticated. Okay. So a few years ago, I guess 3 or 4 years ago, Facebook developed an application that they gave away for free. It's an open source application. Yeah, it's very nice that they did this.
But you have to like and share it and poke and all that stuff and be tracked by Zuckerberg, right? No, I'm just kidding.
That's always the case. As a very wise person once said, if a service is free, you are the product.
Introducing the brand new FREE Consent Machine.
You're not the customer, you're the product. And so it applies across the board. So if you're getting something for free, be careful. So this comes from Facebook. It's called OSQuery. And the beauty of OSQuery is that it allows you to take all the information that's inside your computer, right, and put it into a database. Now, for those of you who are familiar with Splunk, you know that Splunk does this, right? Splunk does it very, very well, and a few other applications do it well also. So Facebook did this and did it for free. You can download it. It's available for Mac, it's available for Windows, and it's available for Linux. You can see the downloads right here, and it's pretty simple to download. And so what I want to do today is I want to show you how to use this tool on a Windows system. So still, even in 2025, well over 90% of all the computers out there are Windows, for good or bad. But they are Windows, right? But if you're running a Mac OS, you can see that you can download it for Mac, and there's a Linux and Debian and the Linux ARM. So they've got it available for just about any operating system. And so once you download this to your Windows or other machine, and I'm going to demonstrate it in Windows because that's what most people are using. And I'm really targeting the people who are at home, who aren't necessarily IT professionals or cybersecurity professionals, who want to know whether or not they've been hacked. I should say that one of the things that has happened in recent years is we get a lot of people coming to us and saying, hey, we've been hacked. Can you help?
Yep.
And we take a few of these cases. We can't take all of them. I get literally, I think I counted last month. I got 200 requests last month.
Wow.
200 requests. I get 3 to 5 a day. And occasionally we take a case, and if we can really help the people, then we'll take the case. There's some cases where we can't. And so I'm targeting those people. And I've also learned that hacking, we all here, we know it as, is cybercrime. We know it as penetration testing. We know it as cyber war, right? Those are the elements that are out there for hacking. But I'm beginning to see a new element of hacking. And that is that we are seeing, for instance, I have a case right now where it's a husband and wife going through a divorce.
Yeah.
And he has hired somebody to make her life hell, right? And he's done a good job. He's done a good job of making her life hell, right? And so this kind of surprises me. Maybe I shouldn't, that this is what's happening in the real world. And I have another case of a YouTuber whose competitor has hacked him, right? So
I'll say that YouTuber isn't me, fortunately. So I'm just kidding.
No, you're way too sophisticated to get hacked, right?
I don't know about that. It could happen to all of us. But go on.
Make one mistake. That's all it takes is make one mistake. And so his competitor has hacked him to limit his ability to produce YouTube videos. So what I'm trying to point out is that hacking is being used in kind of like business warfare.
That's interesting.
And personal warfare. If you would have asked me a couple of years ago, that are people using hacking to hack their ex-wife or husband, or I was like, no, that's not how people use it. But in reality now, I'm beginning to see this, where that not only in a divorce case or a business competition, I'm also seeing it where some people just are harassing other people by hacking.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to do today is to give those people who don't have that kind of sophistication,
I think this computer is haunted,
a new tool. We showed some command line tools and some sysinternals before that you could use. But OSQuery is another one of those tools that you can use to be able to determine whether or not you've been hacked. And the beauty of it is that it allows you to query all the information, all the machine information on your computer. Right? And so not only is it good for the home user, although in some cases it's a little bit sophisticated and hard to read, but it's also useful for those people who are working in the cybersecurity environment and want to be able to monitor a host. Right?
Yeah.
You want to monitor your host to see what's actually going on. Similar to, say, what a Splunk does, but Splunk does, the beauty of Splunk is that it can grab all the information, all the machine data from all of your network machines and then put it into one database. This puts all the data in for one host into a database. So if you're at home and you think that your computer is running slow or you feel like the mouse is moving on its own, then you might want to check some of the things that I want to show you. And there's no single way to know whether or not you've been hacked. There's no single way to do that. But we have to keep in mind a few things that we know about hackers and hacking, right? So when somebody hacks your computer, right, they're putting a service onto your computer. A service is just like a little program that runs in the background, and this gives them control over your system. They can, from a command line or from a GUI, they can control your system. But there has to be a service there, right? The other thing that we know about the hack is that there has to be a connection, right? So for somebody to be able to control your computer, they have to be connected to your computer. That might sound overly simplistic, right? But for the average user, they don't understand that it requires a network connection, okay, on the system to be able to control the computer. So those are the kind of things they're going to be looking for. Are there network connections? Are there services? Is there changes to the registry that would allow the service to run continuously, what's called persistence? Those are the kind of things that we're going to be looking for. And so once I've downloaded the package, okay, it's pretty simple. And then all I have to do is go to OSQuery I, that's the interactive, right? And open up, and that opens a command line, right?
Okay.
It's a command line on my Windows machine. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a few queries that we can use to look for information. But before we do that, so this is a database. It's a virtual database on your system. And what we need to do is to understand how to query a database. So those of you who are familiar with SQL, right, know that you can do a select. I'll put it up on the screen. I'll type it out for you. Select, okay? And then star, which means all of the columns. So after the select, we tell it what columns we want to see. And then we say from, okay? And then the table name, okay? So table there. And then we do a where, which allows us to filter for some condition. All right. And so this is the basic SQL query that every database administrator around uses. It's almost virtually the same no matter what database you're using. If you're using SQLite, it's going to be almost the same. If you're using Oracle, if you're using SQL Server, if you're using MySQL, the language is going to be, it's 90% the same. Each one of them has slight variations in it, but it's going to look like that. Select from table where, right? So if you want to know a little more about the SQL language, we have a tutorials on Hackers Arise, how to use the SQL language.
Great.
So let's start off with the help. Right?
Good place to start. Yep.
Yeah, it's always the best place to start, is that help. All right. And so it goes ahead and gives us a little information. It says, welcome to the OSQuery shell. Please explore your OS. That's what we're going to do. We're explore our OS. Right? And we can see all of the tables. Okay. We can see, connect to an OSQuery extension, socket, disconnect, echo, exit, on down the line. So let's go ahead and run a few queries, right, against our database, the database that we now have, right? Because now that we have OSQuery, we've got this database running. Okay, this is from OSQuery's page. Okay, so what we're looking at is the schema of OSQuery. And schema is just a fancy word that says, okay, these are the tables and the columns of all of the data that's going into the database. Right? And so it's going to vary slightly for different operating systems because there's different data. So we can go through here and you can see these are all the tables that we can query, right, from this database. But, all right, so let's go ahead and let's go back to our interactive. Let me go ahead and change it again. Okay, so we're back with the OSQuery interactive. And what I want to do is just to show a few queries that the average user can use, okay? Let me go ahead and do a clear here. No, it doesn't use clear. Okay, so what we're going to do is try a few items, a few queries. Remember, the queries go in the select the column names from the table, and then where, which filters out some of the information. All right. So
Okay.
one of the things that we want to do first of all is kind of just look for services. Right? And this is kind of it's going to give us a lot of information. And what we're looking for is services that shouldn't be running on your machine. So I'm going to go ahead and create a query. And there you can see. Let's go ahead and look at that query. Right. So I'm copying and pasting so people don't have to watch me type. Which
Yeah.
I get a lot of comments that he doesn't use autocomplete. He makes too many typing errors. So in this case, I'm going to resolve that by simply doing a copy and paste. Right. So let's see what this query looks like. Select name. Name is a column. All right. So select this column. That's the name of the service. Display name, the start type, the path, the user account from the services table, right? So
Nice.
this should show us. Let's go ahead and hit enter. Notice also that it ends in a semicolon. Those of you people who are accustomed using SQL Server, you're not accustomed to ending your statements with a semicolon, but everybody else uses a semicolon at the end. So let's go ahead and hit enter. And you can see there's a lot of information.
Yep.
It's
a lot of stuff there.
It's a lot of stuff. So these are all of the services on my machine. Right? What I would be looking for here is something that is not part of my system. Now, this takes a little bit of knowledge. It's not something that people who aren't familiar with the service that are running on their computer would necessarily see. But as a professional, I have some idea. Maybe not all, because who knows all of these services? It's going to be different on different operating systems. But we're looking for a service, okay, that shouldn't be there. Right? Remember that there's got to be a service there someplace that the attacker is using. This might be too much information, so let's start narrowing it down a little bit and see if we can't get a little more refined look at it.
I will say this, OTW, on our previous video, we had comments that it was too simple. So if people think this is too complicated, they should go and watch that video first, I think.
Okay. Let's go ahead and look at those that are listening on. We're going to look for the processes that are listening on a port. Right. So here's the query. Let's see if I can expand that a little bit. So it's going to be select distinct. Okay. In SQL, distinct means that I'm going to get rid of the duplicates. That's what distinct means. It means the ones that are unique. And then the process name, the listening port, the listening address, the PID. That's the process ID. Every process has a process ID from the processes table. And then we're going to join it on listening ports, okay, on PID where the listening PID are the same. That's where the PPID is equal to the LPID. And let's go ahead and hit enter. And there we go. So what we have now, okay, are all of the processes that are listening on my computer. Okay? Now, if I have a hacker inside of my computer, they're going to be here somewhere. Right? They're going to be. A lot of these are all native to Windows services. Okay, VMware is not native. Okay, here's my VMware. Here's my go-to meeting that I use for meetings and teaching. Some system.
Yeah, if I saw GoTo, I would be worried because I don't use that software. So, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, exactly. So if this appears on your machine, then
Yeah.
you probably got a problem. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to go through, and you can see most of these are all native, okay, to Windows. Here's some more VMware. Here's Chrome, VMware. Now, also, it's important to note that a good hacker will go ahead and try to create a service name that's very similar to these native ones. All right. So, for instance, I have used spool srv.exe. All right.
Yeah.
Because people aren't going to pick that up. Okay. Or service and then take the O out. Okay. And this will make it more difficult for people to be able to, for the investigator to be able to determine. But you're looking in here, these are all of the services that are connected to the outside world. Right? And your hacker is in here somewhere. Right? They're in here somewhere because they have to be, if they're connected to your computer, they have to be in here. And you can see most of these are all pretty self-explanatory. There's system, there's service host, there's Chrome, there's Firefox. Okay. Your hacker, if they've got control of your system, their process has to be in here. And then their IP address is going to be over here. Right. And this is the port. Right. This is the port that your system is using and their port is using, that they're using. So as you know, in all the systems connect by ports, right? So your hacker, if they're connected to your system, is in here somewhere. So let's go back and just take a look at that query again so people can copy it down. So it's select distinct, process name, listening port, listening address, process PID from processes, and then join, okay, listening ports, L on P PID is equal to L PID. So it says where the two PIDs are the same. So that's one of your hacker is going to be in here somewhere. Now, it is, I know some people are going to correct me on this, but it is possible to actually run processes that don't appear, right? It's possible that a really good hacker, say, for instance, a national intelligence agency, can actually alter the kernel so that the process doesn't appear. But from my experience, doesn't happen very often. Most people, right, the process is going to appear here on this list, right? And sometimes you'll find multiple processes that are being controlled by multiple hackers or one hacker who has multiple processes running on your system. In 99.5% of the cases, the process is going to appear in this list, right? Now, let's go take a look at a couple other things, okay?
And I just need to say this because we always get pushback, right? You are doing these investigations. Like you said, you're getting so many inquiries, and you, at the moment, at the time of this recording, have got at least two that you've told me about, active investigations where people have been hacked. And I think you told me, I don't know if you told it during this video offline, but that husband that hacked his wife basically took over everything, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, he took over her phone, her computer, all her Bluetooth devices, which include the garage door opener, the home security system, home alarm system. He's got control over everything. And it's really it's got her freaked out, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
so, I just the reason I'm highlighting that is that this is something that you're actively doing. This is not theory. You do this and you do these investigations.
We do these investigations. Like I said, we can't, because of limited staff and time, we can only do a few of them. If you think you've been hacked by a APT or a national intelligence agency, we probably aren't going to be able to help you. Simply because that's like open warfare. You're looking for, you obviously are on their radar. And
what have you done?
Yeah, what have you done? Right?
Yeah.
And that kind of goes to the question that we ask almost everybody. It's like, okay, do you think that this is APTs? Do you think this is a national intelligence agency? And they'll say, yes, we think it's the CIA who's hacked us. I'm like, okay, what did you do? What did you do to get the CIA's attention, or whatever the National Intelligence Agency is? And so, it's when you started talking about those kinds of organizations, it becomes a lot more complex, right? A lot more difficult, a lot more dangerous, right?
Yep.
And usually that means a lot more money. Right?
Yep.
And so we don't generally take those cases. Right? You might want to call somebody else. Right? So, anyways, let's go on and look at some more. Okay. And so one of the things that the attacker will almost always do is they'll try to go ahead and set up the process to run at startup. Right?
Yeah.
And so let's go ahead and see if we can't find anything that are scheduled for startup. And here's the query. Select source, name, path from startup items. All right.
This is nice. Nice.
Yeah, it's very nice. It's very sweet, especially for people who have SQL skills. If you have SQL skills, then this is really nice. So it's going to be able to go into your machine and pull up all the information. And if you've used Splunk, it's very similar. Splunk uses kind of a variation of SQL, but so we can see here, okay, what we've done is we've gone into the registry. For those of you who aren't familiar, once again, we're targeting the people who have been hacked and don't have a lot of skills, IT skills. The registry is basically a database that's built into your Windows operating system that basically controls how your system works. Like that is your registry. And you can see here that for a process to run at startup, okay, to have a process run at startup every time. So in some processes, like for instance, if you're using a web browser, right? When you shut down your machine, the web browser closes, the process closes, right? But some processes you want to run all the time, and they have to have entries into the registry that tells the system to start this process every time we start my machine. So if somebody's hacked your machine, and you shut it down, then their hack could be shut down. The process they're using could be shut down unless they make it persistent, right? And persistence, right, is often done through, right, the registry. And you can see the HT local machine software. This is one of the most popular. This is one of the original keys within the registry that was used for being able to get a process to run with persistence. The term we use is persistent. It'll run at startup, right? So these are the keys in the registry that will tell the computer to start this process. And you see here, we see the VMware trays here, right? Yeah. We see setup exe, right, which is from Edge, right? You can see, I'm just looking at the path here. Desktop INI, the scheduler exe, the system tray. These are all legitimate things that we want to be run every time we start up our system, right? If you see something else in there, then it's probably malicious. Another way we can look for persistence, once again, persistence is going to be one of the keys in being able to determine whether or not somebody's hacked your system. Because if they haven't put in some way to maintain persistence, every time your system reboots, then they're gone. They have no more control. They have to maintain persistence. Okay, here's the query. Select name, action path, enabled next runtime from scheduled tasks, right? Once again, if the hacker is inside your system and they've been there for a while, you know that they have some way to maintain persistence. And this is one of the places that they can do it, right? These are the scheduled tasks inside your Windows system. So what you're going to go through here and see the things that are scheduled to start in your system. Not real easy to read, but you can see here's an Adobe Acrobat update task. CC Cleaner, right? Here's a go-to meeting. These are these are unique, some of them are unique to my system, but these are the things that are scheduled to start when I start my machine. This is the scheduled tasks. Your hacker will be in there somewhere. Right? They will likely be in there, or else, if they're not in there, then all you got to do is reboot your machine to get rid of them.
Yeah.
So there's quite a few others that we can go through, but I think that probably the best way to do this is look for processes, right? And then, of course, if you find a process that's malicious, just go ahead and kill it, right? You can do that in Windows through Task Manager, right? In Linux and in Unix, you can do it to the kill command. One other thing you might try looking for is, here's where we go, select name, path, and the PID. So the name of the process, the path, where it's coming from, the process ID from the processes table, where on disk is equal to 0. This is where somebody has put malware on your system and then deleted it, right? So there's a process running and there's nothing on the disk. This is a common way for hackers to remain undetected. If they didn't write it to the disk, or they deleted it from the disk, and they're just running in RAM. So let's see if we have any processes like that. We don't. Okay.
Interesting.
So, and that would be normal, right? So if you have a process, most everything has a process on the disk. This would just be the processes that are running, that were put on your machine, then either deleted, or in some cases, a hacker can get a process to simply run in RAM, and this would pick this up as well. You say, okay, I want all the processes that don't have anything on the disk. That's pretty nice. That's pretty suspicious looking, right?
Exactly.
If I've got a process and there's nothing on my disk, right? That's suspicious, right? So in my case here, I don't have any. I haven't been hacked, thank goodness, and so I don't have any of those processes on my system. So these are just a few of the simpler. What I would start with is I'd start with this one right here, and I would start with the list of processes that are running on my system. And then I would start looking for those with listening ports. If I find what look like suspicious processes, then I will start looking at what port are they on and where are they connected to? Who are they connected to by the IP address? And then if I get IP addresses on there that look suspicious, I can start looking and finding out where those IP addresses are. Obviously, you're going to see a lot of them. Let's go back and let's take a look at those again. Let's just do one more. This is a long query here. This one's a little bit more sophisticated. This one is going to be all the processes that are listening on ports that are non-standard ports. All right, that's what it's going to be.
Yeah.
So it's going to be select the PID, the name, the local address, remote address, the family, the protocol, the port, remote port from processes, open ports, and then join it on process. This gets a little bit more sophisticated SQL. But let's go ahead and take a look at those. Okay, so this kind of narrows down a little bit for those things that are not listening on standard ports. So, I mean, I would even probably add to this list things like 135, 445, right? Notice that Firefox is listening on these real high-end ports right here. And then you have Chrome, same thing, listening on very high ports. So you can kind of ignore those. Those are probably not suspicious, probably not malicious, although some people would say that Chrome is malicious.
Let's not get into the privacy discussion because that opens another can of worms, right? Yep.
Right. So you can see that Chrome has a lot of processes. They're listening in on what you're doing. That's how they know that you want to buy a new set of tires tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because they know everything about you because you have their browser on your system. So
exactly.
So these are a few queries that I could run on a system, and after running these queries, I have a pretty good idea if there actually is a malicious process. That's what we would call a hack. Is a malicious process, that one that you didn't put there yourself and is sending information out to some attacker somewhere else remotely. And so we could spend a lot of time going through a lot of different queries, But these are 4 or 5 that the home user can use to be able to determine whether or not they've been hacked. And then if they've been hacked, if you find the process that is malicious in there, then oftentimes you can simply kill it and then delete it. So those are pretty simple commands, and then you should be clean. And sometimes it takes more than that for more sophisticated, but in most of the home users that I work with, quite frankly, what they are, it's real simple processes that they clicked on a link that some rudimentary hacker has developed, and they clicked on a link, and it just gives the hacker control over the system, so they can run commands on your system and see what you're doing. And most of those are not very sophisticated, and they show up here, right, in these lists of processes. So make sure you read them closely. If there says something, it's misspelling of service hosts or misspelling of Chrome or misspelling a system, it's probably malicious, right? Sometimes what the really low-level hackers, what they'll do is they'll just go and use a piece of malware, they found online, and not even change the name of it. And so what you can do is simply look up each one of these names, Google them. Okay, put them into your AI and ask it, what is this? And if it comes back and says, this is, I don't know what this is, or this is a known piece of malware, then you're on the right track, and you can begin to eliminate that particular process and then free yourself from the hack.
Would you recommend antivirus to catch this kind of stuff or block this kind of nonsense?
Well, a lot of the good malware can actually hide from antivirus. So once it's inside, the antivirus will try to detect its entry into the system. But oftentimes once it's inside the system, it'll keep the antivirus from detecting it. That's the system, the one I'm working on right now. This guy had all kinds of antivirus running on the system, and he has all these processes, these malicious processes running on his machine. And once I got rid of some of the malicious processes, then the antivirus worked. But until that time, the antivirus couldn't find anything, right? So antivirus is not the end all. I know people always say to me, how did I get hacked? I had antivirus on my machine.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Well, antiviruses are not perfect. Right? And some antiviruses are better than other antiviruses. And as the hackers get more and more sophisticated, it becomes increasingly difficult for the antivirus companies to be able to detect them. And just like everything in cybersecurity, it's a chess game, right? So the hackers get more sophisticated, then the antivirus has to get more sophisticated, and the hackers get more sophisticated. And this is an ongoing process that's happening every day. So you have to keep up with it to be able to be effective in this arena.
In your sort of experience with customers and the like, is it often Windows computers that are getting compromised? Is that the most common, perhaps because it's just what most people have? Or what's your sort of experiences? Where do people get compromised the most?
Well, because Windows is what the average user is using, right? That's what you're going to find. That's what we find most often. And in the world, right, Windows is still 90% of all the system. So we see almost all of the work that we do. Well, let me back away from it. The one I'm working on right now is actually a Mac. Right?
That's interesting because a lot of people think they won't get hacked if they have a Mac.
Right. But if you click on things, if you click on malicious links, you're going to get hacked.
Exactly.
I think in this guy's case, that's all he did. His competitor was sending him links, and he was clicking on them. And his machine, it's a Mac, so he's got. I think he had, last time I looked at it, we were able to eliminate about 10 pieces of malware, literally 10 pieces of malware on his system. And I don't think we're done yet. So he's got so many processes running on his system. So this is kind of, I think, a little more sophisticated, but also maybe a little bit more difficult. But I think it's possible for the home user. We do have a tutorial on Hackers Arise on using OSQuery. So look for that if you want to use it. And we'll be putting out some more tutorials on how to find malware on your systems in coming weeks and months. And it's based upon our work that we're doing in the real world. We offer what's called a digital forensic investigation service, and we take a few cases every month. And so this is what we find in the real world in doing those types of cases.
That's great, OTW. So for everyone who's watching, I've put links below. Let us know your comments. I'm hoping that this helped some of you who wanted more sophisticated tools and options. But if you want even more, let us know. OTW, as always, thanks so much.
Thanks, David. It's always great being with you. We'll see you again soon.